All right, Jimmy. We are live in the Facebook group. We are live here for the podcast. Before we actually get rolling on this, let me just text Brad, have him go in and check the audio.
Sweet, and I'm looking to see that we are live. Brad just voxed, are you going live? Yes, you silly goose.
Okay.
I'm not seeing it.
Not seeing it in the group?
No.
What? I swear. Just want to record a podcast.
Yeah, I know.
All right, let me see.
Oh, somebody's saying this. Maybe we're just not in the right group. Hey, Facebook user who says, hey, who sounds good. What group are you seeing this in?
CashFlow Tactics. It said financial freedom. That's the one that we're supposed to be in. Yeah, we're live. I see us. All right, we're live, dude. Yeah.
Okay.
All right. So, Brad, check the audio. Make sure that you can hear us, or whoever's on the live right now. If you can give us a thumbs up, say, I can hear and see you. Can see and hear. You're in the group. Can see and hear you. Sounds good. Hey, you. All right. All right. All right. Okay, Jimmy, we ready to go? We ready to do it then?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay. All right. Blah, 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 blah. This is a live podcast, so here we go.
Should we clap for the podcast crew?
Yeah. We'll edit it up on the podcast. So, all right, everyone, welcome to the Rise Up Live Free podcast. We are so grateful, excited, and honored that you are listening to this podcast today. This is your one-stop shop for everything financial freedom and ultimately being empowered of money. I am on the microphone today with my man, Jimmy Vreeland. And Jimmy, we've got a topic of all topics to discuss today. This is at the core, this is at the foundation of all human existence. So hopefully that's a good enough build-up. Jimmy, you want to say what's up to everyone?
Hello, everyone. Happy 4th of July, because this is going to eventually recording it live, but this will appear in iTunes, hopefully 4th of July week.
Heck yeah. We're going to bump this to the top. So for those of you on live with us in Facebook, we've got a really special surprise that we're launching next week for everyone to celebrate our freedom and the 4th of July. But today, Jimmy, we're going to be talking about really the core human value, the value that determines the quality of your life, the value that determines your paradigm, the value that determines really everything you experience in life. You know, Jimmy, when we launched CashFlow Tactics, we were building out this whole idea of how do we take someone that's stuck financially and how do we empower them with money? How do we give them the mindsets, the skill sets, and the network to ultimately collapse time, to achieve what takes most people 40, maybe 50 years to achieve? We wanted to empower people to do it in 10 years or less. We wanted to help give people the tools to become financially free. But as we were building this out, I remember you, me, and Brad sitting, and this is for those of you that don't know this, CashFlow Tactics was actually created in a college dorm. We wanted to have a true Facebook experience. And this is what happens when you have Jimmy Vreeland book your Airbnb. We flew out to San Diego, right? And we spent the entire day working in an office out in San Diego. And then we went to check into our Airbnb at night. And Jimmy, where did we end up checking into?
It was like a weird dorm. My bed was in the loft, and then I think you and Brad had to stay in the same room.
Dude, it was a college. We were so tired. Because we worked all day, like putting this whole business together. And we got there like at 9 o'clock at night, and it was literally a college dorm. So, and I remember we were looking at the instructions of how to get the key, and in the instructions, the person who said, you know, hey, here's where the key's at. They said, don't tell anyone. You're not supposed to be in there. It's a college dorm. And I'm like, what the heck? But anyway, we stayed in the college dorm for the next 3 days, and that's where we launched CashFlow Tactics. But Jimmy, as we were working late into the nights, trying to figure out what content, what we should put into the program and the curriculum, we went back and forth. And Jimmy, on your shirt right there and on my shirt, you can see we've got these logos, and these logos kind of symbolize different programs that you can be in: Acceleration, Empire, or Academy. But underneath those logos, there's 4 P's. Jimmy, what are those 4 P's underneath the logo?
Produce, protect, profit, prosper.
Yes. Produce, protect, profit, and prosper. Now, when we were going to launch CashFlow Tactics, we were only going to include 3: production, the art and science of making money, creating value and exchanging it, protection, it's not what you make, it's what you keep, and then profit, turning the money that you've made and kept into cash flow. That was what we were going to launch with. But Jimmy, when we went back and forth, we realized in our journey over the last decade plus, the money over time, it worked out, right? The money, we were up sometimes, we were down sometimes, but the real investment that we were actually making throughout the entire process wasn't an investment in real estate. It wasn't an investment in vaults. Those are just the tools. What was the real investment we were actually making?
Investing in ourselves, trying to make ourselves better, failing and succeeding daily.
Man. And is that an easy process, Jimmy?
It's the worst.
It's the worst. It is, man. It's the hardest process out there. But I don't believe at the core of this. I mean, as we look at the people that have succeeded in our communities, I look at you, as I look at Brad, we've gone through the gauntlet and we will continue to go through the gauntlet. But I don't know if I would have appreciated financial freedom. I don't know if I would have appreciated if someone just handed it to me on a silver platter, right? If I woke up one day and I had enough money in my bank account, enough money in my vault, and enough real estate that I own and control my time, I bet you I would have had the lottery mentality, and I bet you I would have lost it because I didn't work to earn it. I didn't value it if it was just given to me. So the prime value that we're going to be talking about today, the core value that each one of us gets the opportunity to acknowledge and accept, is our freedom. In fact, inside of the CashFlow Tactics Academy, when we put together the Prosper section of the education, we put together five areas of emphasis, 5 keys that if you accept those keys, your life will dramatically be different, from your financial life to your spiritual life and everything in between. And key number 1 is, we call it one choice. Now, Jimmy, what does it mean to have choice? What does it mean to be free?
Basically, you have one choice. Like, freedom is not handed to you. How you're going to leverage your freedom only gets harder, only gets tougher. But you have one choice, to either go backward or keep going forward, because freedom is like an onion. Like, when I was at Stryker, all I had in the back of my mind was freedom to me meant I didn't have a boss, and that I could say, take this job and shove it, right?
Yeah.
And that was the top of the onion. That wasn't even close to what it actually meant. And so it's constantly pulling apart that onion, going deeper, going higher, and choosing, am I going to rise and live free, or am I going to stay the same? And staying the same most likely means regressing.
Yes, I do not believe, I don't believe anyone in human existence can stay stagnant for long. Maybe a day, maybe a week, maybe a month. But at some point, you're either progressing or you're digressing. You're either living or you're dying. You're either advancing or you're retreating. And that is what this idea of one choice means. Now, as we approach the 4th of July, as we approach this idea of celebrating our freedom, I think a lot of us, because we were born into freedom, we take that freedom for granted, and we wake up and yes, we tell ourselves we're free, but how many of us are actually acting upon our freedom? How many of us are actually looking at our life and accepting the freedom that we've been given, accepting the freedom that we have the ability to choose? So for those of you in the Facebook group, drop some comments in. Tell us what freedom means to you. As you're listening to this podcast today, I want you to think about your life, because for me, I've learned this over and over and over again. And I don't believe this is a lesson that you can learn just one time. I believe this is a lesson that you have to constantly relearn and re-accept, because natural human tendency is, when things are going well, to kind of take your foot off the gas, right? To kind of coast and say, I've arrived, right? I don't need to push or grind as hard. But just like you said, Jimmy, if I'm not grinding or pushing, I'm retreating. Things are falling apart. But, for me, I felt like I accepted my freedom a couple of times. I remember, we won't go into the details of it on this podcast, but I dropped out of high school. I lived in the gutter for years and years and years. And at some point I decided to stop. And at some point I'll never forget, like, people ask me, how did you change so fast? And it was because for the first time I examined the results of my life and I realized, these suck. This sucks. And the path that I am on is going to lead me to further sucking. And once I realized that, I changed. I mean, I moved out of the house I lived in. I dropped associations at that time. I changed everything about my life. And, I plugged into the social conditioning of going to school, getting a job, doing all of those things. And I thought that that was the choice that I made. And everything was going to then just be handed to me on a silver platter because I made the choice to plug into social conditioning. And, as I climbed the corporate ladder, I started, and I didn't realize it at the time, but as I look back now, I realized I was trading some of my freedoms. Now, I was doing it consciously, right? No one held a gun to my head and say, hey, take a promotion, move your family across the country, take more hours, take more responsibility for more pay, right? I accepted those, and I kind of felt like a victim of my circumstances as I was living it, even though I consciously chose to do it. But I got several promotions over the first 4 or 5 years of my corporate career, and I landed in a spot where I was disconnected from everything that I wanted, everything that I really wanted in life. And I kept telling myself I was doing it because A, I had to, right? I was a victim of my reality. I wasn't accepting my freedom. And B, I was doing it to earn money. And when this magical, mystical day of having enough money arrived, then I would choose to go be an intentional person, an intentional father, an intentional husband, intentional with my spirituality and my health and wellness. But up until that point, when I had enough money, I was willing to trade those things in the pursuit of money. And Jimmy, I think we find a lot of people in this stage of life. Would you agree?
Yeah, I think everybody is.
Yeah. And I think a lot of times when people come to us, because we've gone through the gauntlet, and I'll tell you a little bit more about the stories we go, but because we've gone through the gauntlet, it required us to examine each one of our realities, right? The reality that I was living in, and asking myself a question, am I satisfied? Am I satisfied? And, over time, like in the beginning, when I started my pursuit of financial freedom, I couldn't really see what financial freedom meant. Like if someone asked me, what does financial freedom mean? What does it mean to you? All I would tell them is what I didn't want, because there was a lot of pain. And for a lot of people, there's a lot of pain of getting into that rat race and climbing that social.
For example, you didn't want to travel anymore. You wanted to live in the same state as your family. Some very basic requests.
Yeah. And, for me, everything kind of capstoned it. It all came to this event. I lost a bunch of money in 2008. That hurt. And honestly, that started opening up my eyes to what I was doing wasn't working. But what really set me on the path of consciously choosing every single day to do something different. My oldest son, when he was 4, had to get an open heart surgery. And many of you have heard this on other podcasts or webinars or things like that. But I want you guys to understand what I went through, what my son went through at this time. I was disconnected from my family. When I found out the news, I didn't live in the same state as my family, and I had to come home. And I wanted to come home, but I came home and I was with my son, and I'll never, ever, ever forget this night. He had the surgery. And, he was we were talking about this yesterday. He was telling me that he has a story to tell people, and it's kind of a truth or dare story. And he said his truth or dare is, he's part bionic. Like he was dead for a while, and he's part bionic because he was plugged into a it's a ventilating machine, and it was pumping the blood through his system while he was out for about 5 hours in the surgery. But, I was pacing the waiting room. I couldn't sit down. I was so nervous. I was so stressed out. And, he got out of the surgery, and he was just this little teeny boy, had all these, tubes inside of him. And I remember I just sat by his bed and I cried. Because I felt like I was a failure as a father. But it wasn't until the next day, that whole night leading up to it, and especially that whole night, I was thinking, man, what do I want with my life? Because up to this point, I feel like a failure. Up to this point, I'm completely dissatisfied with the results of my life. And I remember my son was in a wheelchair, and I was wheeling him around the hospital and kind of talking to him. And, he's 4. And the hospital that we were at, it had 2 wings, and the wings were connected by this bridgeway, this walkway. And that walkway had windows on either side. And if you looked out one side of the window, you could see the mountains. If you looked out the other side of the window, the hospital's perched up on a ledge, and you could see the entire Salt Lake City Valley. And I'll never forget, I wheeled him to that window bay, and I asked this 4-year-old kid, what did he want? I wasn't asking him. I was asking myself, what did he want with his life? What was he going to do with this renewed lease on life? And I don't remember what he told me, but I remember the choice that I made. Because as I looked at my life for the first time, I examined the circumstances, the reality that I was living in, and I realized I had created it. As good or as bad as it was, I had created it. And if I wanted something different, I couldn't wait to have enough money. I couldn't wait for a promotion. I couldn't wait to retire. I had to create the reality that I wanted. And, in the beginning, it was a hard exercise to start going through and getting clear on what I wanted. And think about this for yourself as you're listening to this podcast. How often do you spend any time visualizing and thinking about the life that you want? And for me, I spent the next, several months doing that, but I made a choice in that walkway, looking out over the Salt Lake Valley, that for the rest of my life, I was going to accept my freedom. And it wasn't a one-time thing, Jimmy. How often do we have to accept our freedom?
Every day you wake up.
Every day you wake up. And sometimes it's easier to do than others. But like accepting your freedom, it's a double edge. It's you have to pick up both sides of the stick, right? If you say, yeah, I'm going to accept my freedom, then you also have to accept the reality of what that means, right? The consequences of how you exercise and use that freedom.
And to boil it down, it really means responsibility.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's the hippie version of freedom, like, oh, I'm going to be dancing with lilies and flowers all day because I'm free and yay. But that's part of it. Sure. My technical definition of freedom is it's free from any coercion, right? That's the libertarian political definition, is free from any coercion. But the other side of that coin is, all right, bro, you have no coercion. What are you going to do? You still have to live. You still have to grow without somebody forcing you. So the other side of the coin is responsibility.
Yes. Man, I love that. Two sides. If you're going to accept your freedom, you also must accept the responsibility of what that means. And, when you accept your freedom, your life isn't perfect, right? And even when you're accepting it consciously, Jimmy, you're going to make mistakes, right? And that helps you learn. What is working in life and what the natural laws of life are, and how you can more fully align with those principles and those truths that will get you the outcomes that you're looking for. Now, Jimmy, with 4th of July coming up, let's go back in time a little bit. You've been on this historical, for the last 2 years, you've been on this historical just conquest, studying some of the greats of history. So let's talk a little bit about
how this develops too. Like, because Susie makes fun of me about this all the time, but I have a very curious mind. And so because of audiobooks, I will go crazy far down a rabbit hole, and then I'll get to the end of it like, and then I'll go on to something else, right? Like last summer, it was it was John D. Rockefeller. I just got fascinated by Standard Oil. And so read everything I could about it. And I learned some pretty cool stuff. But I don't know how I got on this kick with, I was looking for a book to read and I was bored, and I found this book called American Creation, which is about the founding fathers. And do you mind if I Google who the author is?
Yeah, Google it up.
Anyway, I just started reading all this guy's books and listening to all of his audiobooks. The guy actually, Joseph Ellis. So I started listening to all of Joseph Ellis's books, and he specializes. A lot of guys specialize, and I read a lot between 1776 and 1784, like the war years, right?
Yes.
This guy specializes 1784 to 1796, which is the Articles of Confederation, and then the forming the Constitution. And so, like, you watch The Patriot, right? Mel Gibson wins the war at the Battle of Cowpens, and then they're rebuilding his house, and then it's like, boom. It was just so easy, and then we got to 2020, and what a great country, yada, 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 right? That's how it went down.
We skipped some of the details right there in the middle that you're going to take us down what freedom actually means.
Yeah, and then if you go watch stream John Adams, by the way, every 4th of July I stream John Adams and watch those movies. But there was not a unanimous decision to sign the Declaration of Independence. It took a lot of debate, and half the room didn't want the responsibility of governing this continent without Great Britain.
Yes.
One, there was a confidence issue. They didn't think we could do it. They could do it. And two, we didn't want to do it. It was pretty nice having the greatest empire and the greatest navy on earth protecting everything, right?
I want to just pinpoint that for just a minute, because you're bringing up some really interesting points about freedom. Number one is they looked at what was required. I mean, what they wanted, right? What the founding fathers and everyone who fought in the Revolutionary War and everyone who stood up for freedom, what they wanted was their sovereignty, their ability to live productive lives, and no taxation without representation, all the things that were fought for.
Be free of foreign coercion.
Yeah, yeah. And so what they were looking into, though, what they were looking into is they looked into the future and they looked at all these people, immigrating and migrating and all the locals in the land. I mean, putting this melting pot of the United States together, they looked into that future and they realized it was going to be hard. It was going to require a lot of work. And naturally, their human, their human innate ability, they asked themselves, can we do it?
Well,
Can
not
we
only going to have to fight a war. So they were talking, let's say we win this war. Let's say we beat the greatest empire on earth in a land war. Let's say that happens, right? They were saying, oh, no, that's when it's really going to be bad because now we're going to have to govern ourselves.
Yes.
And do we want to, even if we could win the war, do we want to do this? And it was not a unanimous decision.
And that's a powerful thing, guys. Look at your life. I mean, you have to wake up and win a war every single day. You have to go into battle every single day and fight for what you want. Are you willing? Are you capable to A, wake up and have that tenacity and have that fire to fight for what you want? And B, man, is it worth it? Like, because that's what these guys are asking. Even if we could win the war, are we capable of becoming the people, necessary to build a free state, to build a free country, and to bring and unify people together? And I think there's so much relevance to this topic, especially right now with what we're going through.
Here's the interesting part. So James Madison, like his political genius was he was able to read about the last 2,000 years of political history and like put and thread the needle of how we could actually make a republic work. Because if you look back in history to that time, it was 2,000 years of failure, of democratic failure and Republican failure.
Yes.
So it wasn't only that. It was like, can we actually do this?
Yes.
So can I go back even more in history to what this story helped me stop being a little whiny bee when I was whining about my freedom and responsibility, right?
Let's keep going down the rabbit hole. This entire episode is about your one choice. It's your freedom. And freedom, I mean, it sounds simple, but it's such a complex subject.
And like I play a tough guy on the internet, right? I play a tough guy on this podcast.
Yes.
But there is some days where I'm just a whiny little bee. Like, I gotta pay my taxes. I gotta track a P&L. I gotta manage employees. And I would whine, but I'm financially free, right? So I'm on a run one day and I was listening to a Jordan Peterson podcast.
Love that podcast.
It's awesome, but it's like, it was awesome the Israelites got out of Egypt, right? There was the plagues and they fought and God opened the Red Sea, right? But everybody forgets they didn't spend 40 years in the desert, eating it, just sucking it up. And that's the price of freedom, is the responsibility to get through the desert. It is not hippie, it's not hippie dancing with me and Ryan with lilies and skipping through a meadow in Utah.
Yeah.
It's the grind. It's like, and so once I'm like, damn, if the Israelites had to do it, it's like, who am I to think I don't have to do it? And that's why it's not being a little whiny about it.
And, I mean, if we're going to take a biblical stance on it, I mean, from the very beginning, from Adam and Eve, right? From the very beginning, we are to live by the sweat of our brow, right? The things that we have, the things that we're able to produce, the things that we're able to create, they don't just magically appear. They're not, manna from heaven, right? They require us to rise up and live by the sweat of our brow. If we're going to go down history, in our course that we teach, I mean, there's this whole module about your one choice, your freedom. And we bring up the example of Viktor Frankl, right? Because I think sometimes we can look at our life and say, this isn't fair, right? I didn't have the same starting point as Jimmy or as Ryan or as Brad or whatever it is. And things aren't fair, right? And that's true, right? I mean, none of us start from the same spot. Some of us start with a leg up. Some of us start with a leg down, right? But no matter where we're at, if everything is stripped away from us, and Viktor Frankl, found himself in a Nazi prison camp, right?
Back up. Before we go to Viktor Frankl, we got to explain who he is.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Okay, so Viktor Frankl, he was a psychologist. What's his book? Man's Search for Meaning. Search for Meaning.
Yeah.
Definitely a game-changing book.
Yes.
So he's a shrink in Austria before the war. He had a chance to get out. He had a chance, but it was his mom or his dad. Something held him back, and he stayed. And so then he spent 4 to 5 years in a concentration camp, and like the book is harrowing.
Oh man.
So he gets out, and he realizes that no matter what happened, there is a human being has a response / ability.
Yes.
That he always chose how he was going to react in whatever horrible thing he saw in those concentration camps.
Yes.
And keep talking. I'm going to Google what his branch of psychology is called.
Yeah. So what, and this has been espoused in the Happiness Advantage and other modern books of positive psychology. But at the core of everything, when he was in the pit of despair, right, he looked at his circumstances and he said, everything can be taken from a man, but one thing, the last of human freedoms, to choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances, to choose one's own way. So if Viktor Frankl can come to this acknowledgement, if Viktor Frankl could come to this reality in the grimmest of circumstances, then I want you to consider a possibility that your destiny, whatever you dream or envision that to be, that can be shaped by your conditions. And if you allow yourself to be focused on your conditions, then you become a victim. And I believe, the majority of the population of the world today is a victim of their reality. They're a victim of their conditions, and life isn't fair, and they're right. But the longer you live in that reality, the longer you stay focused on that paradigm, it's just a self-perpetuating reality, because no one is coming to save you. No one, right? It doesn't matter who gets elected this next whatever fall. It doesn't matter at all who gets elected. It doesn't matter what political party's in, at the top in power. It doesn't matter what the taxes are. It doesn't matter what the stock market is doing. Your conditions will never give you the destiny that you want. But on the other side of that coin, Viktor Frankl, if you're willing to accept your one choice, your freedom, your ability to make a decision, to accept the reality of life that you have created, and then do something about it, then your life can completely change. He went on to say that between stimulus and response, like when something happens in our life, because we can't control, right? I can't control, Jimmy, if you come over and decide to punch me in the face, we've got pretty close to that a couple times. I can't control that, but I can control my response to that condition that I find myself in. And between that little space of time, between stimulus and response, that is where our power lies. So guys, as we get ready to celebrate one of the most time-honored traditions in America, which is the 4th of July, I want you to ask yourself, the Declaration of Independence was written, and it says 3 things. You, my friend, wherever you're at, have the unalienable right to life. No one has the right to take your life. You also have the unalienable right to liberty, to freedom. And on the tail end of this, you have the unalienable right to the pursuit of happiness. But what I believe is, yeah, you're born, right? That's just your reality. You are alive right now. But what separates from where you're at right now to your pursuit of happiness is what sits in the middle. It's your liberty. It's your one choice. It's your freedom. And every single day when you wake up, and every single night when you go to bed, and probably several times throughout the day, right? You have to ask yourself, will I accept my one choice? Will I accept my freedom? No one's going to force it on you. You have to accept it. And it's picking up that two-sided stick, right? You accept it, but then you have to accept everything that comes with it, the responsibility, the consequences, positive or negative. But if you are willing to do that, your life can and will fundamentally change overnight. The world that you see, the world that you want to see is there right now. You just have to choose to see it. So, Jimmy, as we get ready to approach the 4th of July, anything else that we want to pull from history into the present?
I always find time on the 4th of July to be grateful that there were people who were willing to make those tough decisions, who were willing to fight those wars, and there's a lot of political unrest going on around in our country. And in my studies of the founding fathers, I honestly think they did the best they could do, right? They left some more meat on the bone that we got to go figure out and we got to fix.
Yeah.
So 4th of July for me, it's always a double-sided coin too. Like, I love this holiday. I'm so grateful for everything they did, but I also recognize there's meat on the bone that we are here to keep all this whole experiment in freedom. We have a part to play, our generation, and we got to figure it out. And to me, the way to show gratitude is to keep trying to figure it out.
Yeah. I believe, Jimmy, in everything you just said. And I hope wherever you're listening to this podcast that you examine the world that you live in, because your world is different than my world. And the only thing that separates that or changes that is our paradigms. inside of the CashFlow Tactics Academy, when we decided in the college dorm in California 3 years ago to put this course together, this prosper section, this is the undercurrent of everything. It's the undercurrent of you making money, keeping money, and turning it into cash flow, because at the end of the day, none of that stuff matters, right? What really matters is what you do with money. Money is simply a tool. And just like any tool, right? Money will never replace you as the driver. If you are willing to rise up, if you are willing to accept your one choice, your freedom, your life can change immediately in a moment's notice. And just like my life over the bridgeway, after my son had a surgery, that wasn't the one choice I made, and now it's been made forever. I have to accept my freedom every single day, and sometimes it's hard. Sometimes when we have our meetings, our weekly meetings, and our quarterly planning, we look at the results of our business and we say it's not good enough, and I have failed, or Jimmy hasn't come across the finish line. That rarely happens, or whatever it is. Like, we get to look at that and say, yeah, guys, I can do better. I know I can do better. Do I want it? If so, then what am I willing to do about it? So the 5 core principles, because I think I want to do a podcast as we've gone through this discussion on each one of them, but the 5 core principles inside of the Prosper section of the Academy, which if you don't have access to the Academy, man, you need to get access to that as soon as possible. It is the most elite financial training platform ever created. Now, I'm not just saying that to be bold. I'm saying that because it's true. If you want a complete paradigm shift of what money is, how to use it, and how to be empowered with it, you need to join CashFlow Tactics Academy. But number 1, at the foundation of everything is one choice. Number 2 is 2 paradigms. We'll talk about that on another podcast. Number 3 is 3 questions. Once you understand that you have one choice and there's two paradigms to have, you have 3 questions that are essential that you have to ask yourself. And then you have 4 tactics of how you put it all together. And then there's 5 currencies that dictate how you use your most valuable resource, your time.
I'm adding the spreadsheet too, by the way.
Yes. My friends, wherever you're at. And for those of you, and I love doing this on a podcast because Brad's not on. Brad, if you don't know this, Brad is the marketing director of CashFlow Tactics, which we love him for.
Well, what it really means is it's our opportunity to aggravate him to no end.
Oh, yeah. And we're going to aggravate him right now because I'm going to spill the beans.
I love being a horrible employee in my own business. What are we going to do to aggravate Brad right now?
We're going to aggravate Brad right now because guess what? Next week, we are going to be doing a challenge. Next week, we are going to be launching a new form of swag that we've never launched before. I'm going to post a picture of it inside of the Facebook thread. So if you're not in the Facebook thread, get in the game with us. But we are going to be doing a challenge. And for those people that want to participate, we are going to be shipping and giving away the most authentic, the most empowering piece of clothing that you can wear. It symbolizes your freedom. It symbolizes your desire to live a purpose-driven life. And it symbolizes what you see behind me. The only thing that's standing in the way of where you're at today to where you want to be, it's not vaults, it's not real estate, it's not even money, it's you. If you are willing to accept your freedom, to rise up so that you can live free, this shirt is going to be your Superman cape to empower you to do that. So I'm going to drop a picture of it. Next week, we'll launch we'll talk to you about what the challenge is. It's a simple challenge, but we want to be shipping a lot of these shirts out to everyone all across the country. And I want to see you living free. I want to see you accepting your freedom both this week and for the weeks and years to come. With that in mind, Jimmy, how do people get in touch with us?
All right. Oh, let me stop laughing. So you guys know what's going on is, here's how this works. Is like Brad will have an idea and he's like, yeah, I think we could do this probably in like a month. And then Ryan goes on a podcast and says, hey, we'll do it next week. And that's it. I'm going to get a live video of the look on Brad's face when we tell him, oh, we moved that project up.
Yeah.
What was your question? I'm
It's my favorite thing to do, man. It's my favorite. I love that Brad's a planner. Oh, is he on? All right. Well, Brad, sorry about that, man. Sure love you. Love the shirt, dude. Love the shirt. I want my shirt right now.
Awesome.
All right, guys. So if you are willing to get in the game, if you are willing to accept your freedom, I would venture a guess that one thing that is probably holding you back from living the life that you want is money. And I think a lot of people find themselves in that reality. They find themselves in the same reality that I found myself in, a decade ago, where I was looking at the life I had and I was dissatisfied. And I still, just because I chose to accept my freedom, I still had responsibility that came with that, to produce, to provide, to care for my family. So if you're being held back by money, if you are living a dream or fantasy, I guess I will, of being able to have enough money one day and retire, then I have sad news for you. That's never going to work, and you know it. If you are willing to look at the truth for what it is, then I invite you to get into the game with us. We have a 5-day financial freedom challenge. In this challenge, you are going to go through some very painful exercises. You know, we have people posting inside the Facebook group every single day talking about what the numbers and the reality and the truth of those numbers mean to them. But on the tail end of this challenge, when we show you what doesn't work, we show you what actually does work. And our mission is, yes, it's to help you become financially free in 10 years or less, but our mission more than anything is to get you to accept your freedom. And if you're willing to do that, guys, join us at cashflowtactics.com. Check our challenge out, cashflowtactics.com/5-day challenge. And I can't wait to see you in the game. And download the next podcast, do all the things you're supposed to do, rate us, subscribe, share. And we thank you for listening today.
See you guys. There were some great comments in the thread today. Chad said, I signed up to dance in the lilies with you guys.